There's a reasonably good chance you have no idea where this is. It could be Utah, Arizona, or perhaps the Gobi Desert, but it's not. This road leads to one of the more exciting journeys you could ever take, through an ancient land with some of the greatest archaeological treasures and surreal landscapes known to man. There's also a reasonably good chance you don't know who this is, but he's uniquely qualified to be your very special guide on the adventures you'll find within a place relatively few Americans have discovered. He was born and raised here, served in the military, and has flown, dived, climbed, trekked, and camped throughout the entire country. And so, while he may know this land better than just about anyone, he's not just any tour guide. He is King Abdullah II, and you are invited on the royal tour. If you've never considered going to Jordan, it's probably because this tiny kingdom is situated in a pretty rough neighborhood, surrounded by Israel, the Palestinian territories, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. But don't let that geography frighten you. Jordan is extremely traveler-friendly. It has an ancient history with some of the world's most significant religious and archaeological treasures, from the splendors of Petra to well-preserved Roman cities such as Jerash. It is a modern Islamic state with a considerable Christian population. It has an active nightlife. And you don't have to look far to find the beautiful people, as well as those who prefer not to be quite so free with their beauty. It's Jordan's social and religious tolerance that sets it apart from much of the Middle East. Perhaps because the country's leadership has always had strong ties with the West. It is only fitting that our journey begins at Ragadan Palace, in the center of Amman. His Majesty has invited me here for a brief chat before setting out on our adventure.
How you doing?
Thanks for having me.
Have a good trip?
Long trip.
Long trip.
But I'm looking forward to it, though.
Excellent. Glad to have you here.
Thanks. You're taking me on a little journey, I understand.
A long one.
Another long one, huh?
Yeah, when we get down there.
It may seem inconceivable to many people that an Arab head of state would clear several days from his busy schedule to take an American reporter on a tour of his country. But such is the unconventional style of this young monarch, a man who never expected to be king. Born in Amman in 1962, the eldest son of the late King Hussein and his British-born second wife, Toni Gardner, also known as Princess Muna, young Abdullah was raised in an environment of both privilege and hardship. Wanting him to learn the ways of the world, King Hussein sent Abdullah off to boarding school in the United States for his junior high and high school years.
So I became very familiar with American thinking, American customs, the way you deal with things, to the point that I have two switches. I can put the Jordanian switch on and I can put on the American switch. And to be able to understand another culture, I think, is a tremendous opportunity that I'm very grateful for.
But the young prince was always anxious to return home to join his family, as he did here for one of his father's birthday celebrations. By this time, King Hussein was married to his fourth wife, American-born Queen Noor. And it was not Prince Abdullah, but rather his uncle, then Crown Prince Hassan, who was the designated successor to the throne.
Treason! Fight!
After graduation from high school, the dutiful young son went off to Sandhurst Military Academy in England to train to become a career soldier in the Jordanian army. Upon returning home, Abdullah promptly began his military career, commanding both tank and attack helicopter units and rising to become a major general and head of Jordanian special forces.
I think for people to see members of the royal family carrying the burdens that they're carrying, and the ultimate burden of risking your life in defense of your ideals and of your nation, I think is a way of breaking down barriers that brings a royal family closer to its people, because you're willing to take the same risks that they are.
Unbelievable.
Abdullah took risks in his personal life as well. Like his adventurous father, the young prince had a passion for speed and daring. He was a champion rally car driver, skydiver, and avid scuba diver. But it was a beauty named Rania who would really capture his imagination. A Jordanian woman of Palestinian origin, she married Abdullah in 1993 and would soon bear him a son. But the young family was in for a shock. By the late 1990s, the world watched with sadness as King Hussein contracted lymphatic cancer and traveled several times to the United States for treatment. But the cancer proved to be incurable. And in January of 1999, knowing he didn't have long to live, King Hussein co-piloted his own aircraft home to Jordan for the very last time. I remember he came off the plane and kissed the ground.
Yes, and prayed his thanks to God for bringing him back safe and sound to his homeland.
Standing in the reception line on the tarmac was King Hussein's brother, then Crown Prince Hassan, who had held the reins of power in the king's absence and was expecting to soon inherit the throne. But in a surprising turn of events, the king announced that he was changing the line of succession, and the crown would instead be passed to his eldest son, Abdullah.
It's a shock when somebody says, I want you to have this responsibility. And I said, well, sir, this is something that I never wanted. It wasn't something that I ever aspired for. And he said, that's probably one of the main reasons why it's got to be you.
And shortly after that conversation, he left us. And then your life changed dramatically.
Very much so, yes. I had a wife and 3 children. So I had a family of 4, and then all of a sudden I had a family of 4 million. The tremendous responsibility and burden on the shoulders was hard to swallow. And I think that's been the most difficult, that my life is not really my own anymore.
Except when you can sneak out on the motorcycle.
Except when they allow me to sneak out. There's a lot more things that I want to do with you and your team that they're not allowing me to do, such as parachute and rock climbing. I've got everybody sort of trying to sabotage a lot of the plans that we have.
When I tell people I'm coming to Jordan, half the time they think I'm out of my mind. They think I'm going to be taken hostage, shot, there's violence.
Unfortunately, the perception of the Middle East, if something happens in one country, it means that there's a travel ban on people going to anywhere in the Middle East. If there's a problem or riots, as you just had recently in Cincinnati, it doesn't mean I can't go and visit Boston. I think the best line that anybody ever said was my mother. If it wasn't safe, I wouldn't want my son to be living in Jordan. And Jordan is, thank God, the safest country in the Middle East.
Why are we doing this show together?
To be able to open people's eyes to what a magnificent land and nation that we have here, and the tremendous surprises and treasures that Jordan holds.
So over the course of the next 5 days, this young king will leave his official duties behind for the first time since he was thrust upon the world stage, and show us his favorite places in Jordan.
All right, clear on the left, clear on the right.
Our royal tour of Jordan begins in the king's private Black Hawk helicopter. Okay, so lots of heads of state have helicopters, but this is different. King Abdullah actually flies this one himself.
I learned how to fly helicopters when I was in the army. I'm using it probably as much as a car. I mean, with the pressure of work, the best way of getting around is by helicopter.
Here I'm taking you to perhaps my favorite spot in all of Jordan, the Wadi Rum or the Rum Valley. My father loved this place. He used to take us here when we were small children.
I recognize it from the film Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, it was filmed right here in Wadi Rum. I think it won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture in '63. That was the year after I was born. Lawrence of Arabia loved this pink desert and these craggy peaks. He called the Wadi Rum vast, echoing, and godlike.